Hi, I'm Wayne and this is Bassador Woodworking. Today I'm replacing the bearings in this DeWalt Radial arm saw from the 1950s. This Radial arm saw has been featured in a bunch of my videos, and anytime I complain about any of the function of this saw, I inevitably get a bunch of comments saying that the bearings are likely worn out, and a lot of the problems I'm experiencing should go away if I just did basic maintenance on this and replace the bearings. And I understand that, and I don't disagree. It's just I've been putting this off for a very long time because everything I've read online says that these are a gigantic pain to work on. So I've ordered some bearings and we're going to see how hard this is. The nearest I can tell, this saw was made in 1954 or 1955. It has a 3/4 horsepower motor and can take up to a 9-inch blade. I mostly use this saw as a dedicated dado station, though it has come in handy more than once when I need multiple crosscut setups. I can use the 10-inch Craftsman saw for one setup and this one for another and just batch out all the cutting at once. I began by removing the guard and blade from the saw. I could then remove the 4 through bolts that hold the motor together. I made sure to thread the lock washers and nuts onto the removed bolts so that I do not lose them, because I absolutely will if given the chance. I could then swing the arm out of the way. It will not be needed for the rest of the process. Removing the front housing from the arbor involves removing 4 machine screws and then giving the arbor some generous taps with a mallet. It pops free pretty easily. Okay, that's one of the bearings I need to get off. That's the other. Neither of them seem like they're in bad shape, but I've got new bearings, I might as well use them. I then spent the next 20 or so minutes trying to remove the retaining ring. I do not own the specialty pliers that make this task easy, so I resigned myself to almost stabbing myself with a knife over and over until I gave up and ran to the hardware store and bought the correct tool for the job. After which, removing the ring took like 3 seconds. I was then able to use a small gear puller to remove the small bearing. I had to shim the puller with a 6mm socket to get the bearing all the way off. But all told, this was infinitely easier than the large bearing. This is where I knew from my research that I would run into trouble. The motor fan is mounted directly behind the bearing, making it impossible to get a gear puller behind the bearing. The motor fan also has a bad reputation for breaking if any real force is applied to it, so I was hesitant to apply a great amount of force to it with a gear puller. I even tried grinding down the arms of my gear puller to see if I could fit it in the narrow opening behind the bearing, with no success. My next idea was to create some blocks out of MDF to spread the force across the motor fan to see if it would then allow me to get enough purchase to break the bearing free. I drilled a 2-inch hole in the center of a scrap piece of MDF and then widened the hole at my makeshift spindle sander. I tried this clamping jig with F-clamps as well as hand screws. I was able to apply an insane amount of pressure to the piece but only succeeded in destroying the MDF and any real sense of enjoyment I had been experiencing during the project thus far. It hasn't even budged. Okay, now that bar is bending. And there's not even any pressure put on that bearing because it still spins freely. I swap out this with another hand clamp. I'm amazed that neither of these hand clamps are broken. And that this has not moved a fucking inch. The MDF is just tearing apart in there. Hi, gorgeous. You look so good, Bailey girl. I finally decided to just hit it with a mallet, and that worked. So cool. Fucking A. Got it, Bailey girl. We got it. And I also got these off. Don't know if those are supposed to come off or not. I'm guessing based on the crimping on this, no. But we'll clean it up and we'll put it back together. Mwah. I used a pipe clamp I had in the shop and a mallet to drive the motor fan back onto the arbor. The arbor drove itself into the top of my outfeed table, but that's fine. Part of the problem, Bailey, is I'm short. Yeah, I'm very short. Using a shorter section of pipe, I gently drove the new bearing onto the arbor shaft. This was not ideal, but I was careful to not inflict any damage on the new bearing. There. Alright. I could then replace the washer and the retaining clip before setting to install the small bearing. I used the same method as before, just substituting a socket for the piece of pipe. Everything from here on was easy. Reassembling the front casing of the motor and then reinstalling the 4 through bolts to get the motor back together. This project was not complicated, it was just difficult. Nothing wanted to play nice, and it did not help that I didn't have any of the proper tools required to make this easier on myself. It took over 2 hours to get the large bearing off of the arbor. Yeah, 2 hours. There were multiple points in time when I was truly considering driving 45 minutes to buy an arbor press or one of those bottle jack powered hydraulic presses. I also realized after getting the bearing off that I probably could have used heat to loosen up everything, but it honestly didn't occur to me before that point. But when it's all said and done, the new bearings worked and it did make a noticeable difference in the stopping time of the blade. And it's all done. Everything's back together. I still have to square the table and stuff, but I'll do that later. Am I happy with the upgrade? Overall, absolutely. It was only about $30 worth of parts, and that was just to get the bearings, which were kind of hard to locate. But it's cut the blade stop time by more than half. So instead of taking well over 40 seconds to a minute, this now takes 20 seconds for the blade to stop, which is much safer. It's still nothing compared to anything modern, but it does make this a much safer saw to use. Do I regret not doing the upgrade sooner? Absolutely not. This was a gigantic pain in the ass to do, and it lived up to every single negative thing I read online about this project. Would it have been easier if I had the proper tools? Absolutely. I don't have the proper tools, though, and I don't do this all that often, so I'm not going to go out and buy an arbor press and all these other things that would have made this infinitely easier. I'll probably go out and buy an arbor press. can already think of like a dozen other things that it'll come in handy for. Maybe I'll just steal my dad's. Alright, well, thank you for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to keep up to date with new projects as they are released. And until next time, thank you.